I remember speaking to a coach early on in this work, and this coach would always, every time I talked to him, he would tell me about recent successes, but I didn't need him to do that, nor did I ask him to do that. And I realized it wasn't about anything that we were doing. It was about him. He felt that the resume was who he was.
Welcome to episode 6 of the Untapped Potential podcast. Today's guest is with Stu Singer. Stu Singer is a highly experienced sports psychologist, performance consultant, and founder of WellPerformance. He's worked with teams in the NBA, WNBA, NCAA, Major League Soccer, and the National Women's Soccer League. He's passionate about helping people sharpen their high performance skills, most importantly, in a healthy and sustainable way. You're going to love this conversation. I certainly did. You're going to hear it from both Stu's perspective as a practitioner, and he's the first sports psychologist to have that I've spoken to so far. You're going to hear from his psychological point of view, his psychology point of view, obviously all aimed at us, the practitioners. Just to remind you, if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on iTunes or Spotify platforms. By doing this, you're actively going to help spread this content to practitioners that need it. Like I said, you're going to enjoy this episode. Without delaying it any further, here's the conversation with Stu Singer. Welcome to today's episode with Stu Singer. And Stu, thank you so much for offering your time and insight and expertise on this podcast.
I'm excited to be here, Richard.
Yeah, just for anyone listening, kind of Stu reached out to me a while ago now, beginning of the year, I think, or kind of around that year. And we've just been having these wonderful kind of catch up and meetups online, of course, throughout this year. And I've found them really valuable and kind of really value you now being, part of this and the network that I have to reach out to. So yeah, thank you for that.
And I feel the same way.
Touching on some of the conversations, and this podcast is all about the practitioners, the coaches and practitioners that are supporting elite athletes. And I think kind of what you're the first sports psych to have on this show, sports psychologist, and I think you're going to have two really interesting perspectives. One, through your own experience of being a practitioner, and two, obviously, through your trained lens as a psychologist. And so I remember us talking a while ago, and I think the first place I'd love to start is around the idea of when you potentially, I don't know if this is that quote from you, kind of getting it wrong with regards to overworking and how that impacted your life, and maybe a bit about that scenario where you realized you were overworking.
Yeah, I don't know if the exact term for it would have been overworking, but what I did realize was that I was on, the merry-go-round of coming home, being home for, a few weeks, couple weeks at most, and then being gone again, and then, coming back and then being gone again, and just taking on as much as I could possibly take on, regardless of whether it fit exactly right or I don't want to say regardless of thinking about my family, because I did, and certainly would always talk to my wife about how this was going to work and fit. But I felt like we were just on this merry-go-round. And it was COVID that happened, and everything shut down, and I no longer was traveling. And I was probably traveling for work, meaning going to different colleges in the US or with other professional teams to work with them and year round for years. And then all of a sudden everything comes to a stop. So at one point you're constantly, getting it. I'm in airports all the time. I'm in hotels. I don't know what city I'm in. Sometimes I forget, where I am even. And then it stops. And at first it feels wonderful. Then it feels anxiety producing, because what if it really, really stops? And this is how, I help to support my family. But somewhere within that time frame, I realized I wanted to do things a bit differently. and I didn't want to be leaving all the time. I don't mind leaving sometimes, and I do feel like, the work when I'm one-on-one or face-to-face, I guess I should say, is very important. But I just don't want to be doing it all the time. I don't want to be gone as much as I was gone. And so that was the realization moment, I think, for myself and for my wife and I, to realize, like, we can make this work, but it doesn't need to be me gone all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think you were aware of that pre-COVID, like when you were in it? Was there signs that you could see, or and I say this because from many of the conversations, I think around boundaries, around work-life balance, kind of very common thing within practitioners, finding some sort of, I think balance is probably not the right word, but some sort of harmony within that. And many that I've spoken to anyway reached a crisis point, which made them realize, like, what am I doing? And before that, they couldn't see it. And so for anyone listening who my point in saying this is, and seeing if you had any signs that you're aware of, just to kind of help maybe allow people to, if they are in the space right now or they're not sure, like if there are any signs that you could see personally.
It's weird because I'm going to actually answer this with yes and no, okay. Let's say. So one of my big core beliefs is that I must walk the walk, right, not just talk the talk. So as a mental health professional, as someone that's helping people be fully engaged in their work, but in a healthy way, I always kept perspective of, like, well, what does that mean for me? Okay, so I never let it completely leave me. Mm-hmm. But the quick answer is, yeah, I remember being in an airport by myself, meaning, I guess, without my wife, without my kids. Yeah. And, and I was just like, what am I doing? I was looking around and I was seeing families traveling and, mm-hmm, and spouses together. And I was just like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. This isn't where I want to be right now. Mm-hmm. But I didn't. So going back to your question of, like, were you in it but didn't see it? I was in it and I didn't see it. And then I did have this moment of remembering, kind of just looking around, being in an airport alone and just being like, I'm here all the time in these places, maybe not that airport, but in airports all the time alone. Mm-hmm. And that's not how I want to do the majority of my life, mm-hmm, being in hotels and airports and dinners where you're just by yourself often. And I so there was like an epiphany moment then. And yet, when I was home with family, I was always, I was specific in being present as much as I possibly could. I made as many decisions business-wise, professionally, that included where are my kids, sporting events and when, so that I don't miss things as much as possible. And so I took care of myself in terms of, working out, and, I'm a massive believer in mindfulness meditation. So staying true to those principles. So I was doing things, but I think I was a bit in, almost in autopilot, where I was also doing everything and just not realizing, like, I was losing some of the fulfillment, not in the work, but in the bigger picture of life.
Yeah, right. I think that's really well said. And it sounds like I know, kind of, we've spoken before many times, but your family seems really close. And so, again, for any practitioner who's like, well, how do I change this? What type of things kind of did you work out? Well, how does maybe, if you could, I don't know if this is an easy thing to describe, but like the process you went through with your partner or your family to say, look, how can we change this? Because I think I hear, again, I've heard many practitioners describe that there's a sense of feeling trapped. Maybe they're earning really good money in a particular salary in a particular position, which there are relatively few of those, or two, they just can't see another way of how to do things differently.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think in hindsight, conversations and communication, I guess, between my wife and I was always good. So we always, we did a lot of planning together no matter what anyway, prior to all this. But, when I look back on it, the start of this is like any career is, you must hustle. You have to, you have to take opportunities when they present themselves. You're establishing your credibility and everything. And so we were both very, we were aggressive minded in terms of taking the opportunities, but maintaining communication around how's everything going. Right. It's funny because just before this interview, I actually had a coach that I was working with, and we were talking about being grateful for family and all that support. And I shared with him a story of one of my first years of really being involved at the Division I level of sport. And I told him that I remember calling my wife the night that the team that I was working with won to make it to the Final Four in NCAA basketball, and called her after the game, and we both just started crying because it was not me that achieved that. It was not even me and her. Technically, it was the players that achieved it, really. But that culmination, that experience, was because of the support that she had given. We had 3 kids. She was, working full time herself and committed to helping me make this happen, and the sacrifices that she was making so that I could pursue this. And so that stuff never left our vision, our sight. So we were very clear on making sure that we never, ever, ever let that leave, because as important as what I feel I'm blessed to do what I do, and I'm passionate about what I do. It's not as important as her or my kids, and I won't ever make a choice that's not in their best interest, our collective best interest, and that never leaves us.
That, again, another powerful example, and I think relating a common, if I paraphrase, but a common phrase that has come through in the research process I did was, the idea of, I've supported athletes to reach Olympic success or championship success or tournament success, whatever the sport, and I've waited for this emotional rush to hit, and it hasn't come. I thought this is why we do what we do. And it's like from the practitioner that said that to me, it kind of put them on this huge spiral of, why am I doing this? What are the idea of success? What is success? And what it sounds like to me, because you're such a team, it's so much, the result is almost, it's this joint venture that you are both involved in. You still are both involved in. And so I suppose the next question is, how do you see success? What is success to you?
Again, just so timely in these questions. Again, working with the coach that I was just working with, and we literally just did a core values exercise. And I've done this exercise myself. And so what I mean by that is I just start with writing down all the values that I have. Or I ask the client to just, what do you value, period, whether life, work, whatever, what do you value? And just write it down. Don't, because it can be very hard. It can, especially if you're like, oh, I have to get my core value. No, just write down everything that you value. And if it's a dozen things, if it's 50, so what? Just write it down, and then we'll pare it down. And then the goal is to pare it down to about 3 core values that you can really, and that means getting rid of some that feel very powerful. And for me, I reached these 3 core values. One is my family. 2 is health. So both mental and physical health.
Right.
And then 3 is in work related, is like genuine care for my clients. Meaning that I want them to feel that what I want for them is their fulfillment, their success based in like, what is it that they want, and do they feel that from me? Not do they feel the paycheck, not do they feel, recognition, but do they feel that I care about what they care about.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I define success through the lens of those 3 core values. Do my wife and my kids and those that are closest to me know that I genuinely care about them, and probably hear it on a daily basis? Yes. Do I take care of my physical and mental health? And how do I know that? What are my routine? And then lastly, would my clients ultimately say that that's what they feel from the experience of our work? And I think on a typical day, the answer would be yes. I'm sure that I fall short some days, but I think on a typical day, the answer would be yes. And so I can define success even in a losing season, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not that we're happy about a losing season, not that there's not, very, very hard and challenging days when that might be the case. But I can still define like, hey, we're moving towards our true north. And that's everything. If you can do that, I think.
Yeah, great answer. And I think like there's so many things kind of with this conversation. I'm going to go and I'm listening to what you're saying. I suppose what you're talking about, like the work you're doing with a coach, and I really want to come into mindfulness and kind of the work you do in that space. But I suppose kind of leading into what to me, what you're describing about even looking at values, mindfulness, being aware of physical, mental health, kind of what you're describing to me is a process of whether it's personal development or self-growth. And I will be interested to hear what's your definition of self-growth? And I say this, I suppose, before you answer. A paper was put out, which I'll put below in the comments below, or the description below, recently, from Dave Hamilton and Brad DeVries and kind of a few other people. And I found it really interesting. It's looking at the characteristics of and attributes of a high performance director in American sport. And so the idea that the high performance director has got many plates spinning, almost like the conductor of many different departments. You've got all these different departments that you're kind of managing and one of the elements that was mentioned in this paper were kind of opportunities for self-growth. And I suppose coming back to me and many of the conversations, I used to see self-growth or personal development through just my technical lens of developing as a strength coach, and again, the conversations through the various domains that people work in. And I think that left for me a massive blind spot. I couldn't see it. And again, I couldn't see that at the time. But I thought just upskilling and technical qualities was me growing. But in fact, it wasn't at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to answer it from two spaces almost. I think when I think about this. So I have a technique that I use that I kind of I guess that I kind of put it together over the years of experience, that I call the 2 truths. And here they are. The first truth is that I am forever a work in progress. Right. So it's kind of this acceptance that I'm never going to reach this full and total mastery of anything. And I accept that. And I accept it with excitement, because I think it would not be great to think I'm going to reach the end of my development. I don't want to reach the end of my development. So instead of being miserable about the thought of like I'm not good enough, I don't think of it like that. I just think of it as an exciting, there's more to learn forever. But the second part of that truth is that I'm also exactly where I should be today. And that's based in like, how can I be further than whatever my life experience has allowed me to become? So on one hand, I accept that there's more to learn and grow, but I'm not angry with myself because where I am right now is where I'm meant to be, because I can't be further along, because whatever experience I need, whatever knowledge I need, to get to the next, maybe I don't have it yet. So that's one part of that equation of self-growth. But the other that I would say is, and I read this recently, this is not long ago that I read this, and I thought, man, that's it actually. Like, self-growth is actually doing the self-awareness work that allows us to break from the belief that this is all we can be. And I think most people, I let me just say this. I'll speak for myself and I'll speak for the majority of my clients.
Right.
Is that I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for the people that I've interacted with. What limits us typically is not actually what we're capable of, but what we've kind of told ourselves that we're capable of. So it's actually just breaking free of these dumb stories that we tell about it. And so, like, for me, self-growth is actually just like getting better and better at just saying, no, that's a story. That thing is just a story that you were telling yourself. Get out of that habit, because typically it's a habit, and then see what happens. And then you tend to kind of grow and become more, if nothing else, just more authentically you, more comfortable in your own skin, what have you. But to me, that's it. But it's not like, oh, give me more knowledge, as much as it is stop the old storylines. And then the knowledge and the experience just kind of flow from there.
Right. I love that description so well.
I can't take it though. I read it, like, that's it. But I do think I was on the path. And to me, where mindfulness comes in is exactly this. So I can, it might be a good segue to that part of it.
Yeah, please do just expand on that. And I suppose maybe whether it's now or in a minute, kind of your lens, or even your professional lens, the idea of low self-esteem, because potentially that's a story then, isn't it? And because so many seem to be affected, and I was, but so many seem to be affected by this low self-esteem, which is fueling this drive to never happy with their achievements, never happy because they don't feel. Just from some of the comments that I've heard, like, it just sounds like the way. And I wonder what you. So mindfulness and your perspective on low self-esteem.
Man, it's all tied in together, though. It's so powerful, and yet so, like, sometimes it can feel so out of reach. But it's not. The beautiful part is it is not. It is not out of reach. So I think what you're referencing, probably to a certain degree, when you're talking about that self-confidence or low self-esteem, is because often everything that we're looking for is external. And again, in terms of the work that you do, and you and I've had so many great conversations, so I feel pretty familiar with your work and the conversations that I think you have with other professionals, is that everything, especially in high performance world, although you could probably say it's the same if you're a lawyer and you're an accountant, whatever, is like, how are you recognized by the people in your industry? And what can you put onto your resume to say that you're good? And, I remember speaking to a coach early on in this work, and this coach would always, every time I talked to him, he would tell me about recent successes, but I wasn't asking. And it wasn't bragging either. It was like he was trying to convince me of that he was worthy, but I didn't need that. And it was, I was just like, what's going on? And I recognized it was almost like selling their resume every single time that he spoke to me. But I didn't need him to do that, nor did I ask him to do that. And I realized it wasn't about anything that we were doing. It was about him. He felt that the resume was who he was.
Right.
And so, but you can't win that game. Not because your resume is not wonderful. It could be, but because you'll always think you need to add more to a resume. If that's the game that you're playing, it's like a scoreboard, in life, and you just keep going, well, I got to get more points. I need more points.
Right.
Because someone's catching up. And so for me, that lack of self-esteem comes from people they're always judging themselves in comparison to others or what somebody's done today. Even if they've had that everything's wonderful. Oh, I didn't do this, so now somebody's getting ahead. And it just is this nonstop storyline I need to prove to others. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard game to get out of, but the game is ultimately about learning how to, I'm not in a race with anybody else. Getting to know yourself, again, going back to what you value most.
I want to briefly interrupt this conversation, especially around the idea of getting to know yourself. And so I want to draw your attention to the Practitioner Needs Analysis coaching program. The conversation in my research has shown clearly that 160 highly successful practitioners supporting some of the world's greatest athletes have on one level achieved a great deal within high performance sports and academia. Yet on a much more personal level, many are quietly suffering to maintain the perception of being successful and happy. This is the inconvenient truth sitting just under the surface within our high performance environments. The cost of this truth ranges from divorce, absent parent, physical and mental illness, all of which contribute to limiting the performance impact we all strive so hard to achieve. The human element has been forgotten, with many top practitioners now finding ways to leave our beloved industry. My research process has spawned the services I now provide to support performance practitioners. Athletes have a vast array of options within their support network to help them thrive, optimize, and activate their full expression. But very little is currently aimed at offering this unique support for performance practitioners. This is where the Practitioner Needs Analysis coaching program fills that gap. The Practitioner Needs Analysis allows you to identify what qualities are most important for you to show up in your role, career, and life in your fullest expression. It provides an inner analysis that highlights the components of your life, giving you clarity on what is blocking you, how it's blocking you, and what you need to do to release those blocks. This guides you to tailor your goals and actions away from potential burnout, divorce, or illness, and instead towards one where you thrive as a practitioner and in your personal life. To find out more about the group and one-to-one options Men Behind Sport offers, visit www.menbehindsport.com or email me at richard@menbehindsport.com. Links are below. Now, to return back to this great conversation with Stu Singer.
Being willing, I do think that there's a beauty. I don't want to make this sound like I love trying to achieve really challenging things. There's nothing wrong with that. It just can't be at the expense of your wellness, and other things that you value greatly. And then the biggest part is, and you alluded to this, but I had an epiphany. The Washington Mystics in the WNBA, we won WNBA championship 2019. Great team, great coaching staff, great relationships. We had known that we were in place to do this as the season began. So there was a vision from the start. It wasn't this random experience. It was about as good as you could ask for. That night, we celebrated till into the morning hours. I had to get up and get a flight at 9 a.m. Had to get up and be at the airport by 9, flight at 10. And I was on a call with a client by 3 o'clock that afternoon. My life did not change. Mm-hmm. I had this unbelievable experience, the pinnacle of professional sport. And within hours, I had to get back to work.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I still value that experience, but it actually did not change anything beyond great relationships, great memories. I still work with many of the same athletes, same coaches, and it's wonderful in that regard. But I don't stop. Life doesn't stop. The world doesn't stop. And if you think that that's going to be the thing that tells you that you're okay, it won't be. And I think that's what you were alluding to earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and I was sucked into that, and by my no one to blame. That was my stories, and I've heard that a lot. And I think, I guess before we dive into mindfulness, and because in a way that's potentially a tool, a solution, maybe you want. But what you just described there, like the team, you're talking about a team. You're talking about a really great team, staff, relationships, and I suppose what to you then makes an elite performance staff department environment? So not the athletes, but from your point of view, whether it's your experience, your psychologist point of view, and I suppose again an element, I suppose leading into low self-esteem or sense of low worth. Callum Walsh, I've talked about him a lot in a few of these podcasts, but he's been on this podcast in the second episode. But he's doing a doctorate at the moment in looking at why professional football is broken, so soccer, if anyone in America. And one of the things that he's uncovering is the idea around staff have this perception of self-preservation. They need to protect themselves, whether it's job insecurity, whether it's competition for roles, and job insecurity. If a new manager comes in, who's going to get fired? But really, the idea of self-preservation, which then breeds or is leading to kind of defensiveness, holding, like trying to stand out, trying to be like, look at the impact I'm having. That's their fault. Like this idea of just protection. It's a sense of protection. So I wonder, from your point of view, what makes I suppose psychological safety or a really good environment from your point of view?
Well, I do want to say, unfortunately, maybe you and I and maybe some of your other guests, pulling back the curtain a bit on high performance world, that's pretty common that everybody's in that self-preservation mode and a bit of the self-promotion mode. I should say everybody, but you can feel that within the environments often.
Yeah.
And to the point where it's not good. It's not particularly good, to be functioning that way. So with that being said, I think I can name three really, really important parts. The very first one is, I think when a staff is fully curious, so very just interested in best practices, new thinking, that it's validated to bring thoughts that are not how we've always done it to the table.
Right.
And being genuine about that, like really genuinely interested in that. I think valuing care, so really caring, like, the longer I'm in high level sport, the more I realize it's an unbelievably challenging environment. You're literally on these people are on the world stage. They're being viewed and picked apart, in a way that, as of today, there's no way that an athlete 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years, and certainly after that or before that, were picked apart. I mean, they're picked apart for hours and hours after the fact of a performance that they've put their entire lives into. Like, people don't realize all these people that are performing, they miss holidays, they miss birthdays, they miss anniversaries, they miss funerals, they miss weddings. They spend their lives they eat a certain way, they sleep a certain way just for this experience to perform. and then get picked apart unmercifully.
Yeah.
And so I have a real respect for the fact that they're in the arena, right? They're actually literally and figuratively in the arena, and it's painful. So you must find a way to care about these humans because it's a hard life. Yes, there's a lot of reward to it, and there's a lot of blessing to it. But it is a very, very hard and just a tremendous amount of hanger-oners, people that are trying to get theirs through, because they know or believe they know. And so genuine care. So being curious as a staff, showing real human care. And then the last piece is this ability to trust and be trustworthy.
Right.
And I think if you can care for people, you can show trust, but also be, trustable.
Yeah.
And then staying curious, not thinking you ever know it all, and being willing to listen to people who maybe aren't on the same, depth chart as you, but yet you're willing to listen. And I'm telling you that year we had that. We had great respect from player to player. We had great respect from player to coach, from coach to athlete, across domains. So whether it was the medical staff, whether it was the performance staff, whether it was the on-court staff, the play, it was a lot of just genuine respect, and it you felt it. It wasn't just reach the finish line. Well, it was a group of people that were on the same page and were genuinely happy for one another in every way. And yeah, I think those things are really, really big. And can I just add one piece around the idea of like that environment? To me, the reason that we have that quasi or close to toxic environment in high performing environment is because people haven't understood what they value.
Right.
At that point, all they value is the next win or the next dollar, the next contract that they can. And so of course they're protective of that, right? But if you can really become clear, this is my job, this is my role, and this is what I value in that role, and I'm not going to leave that space, even though everybody around me is pulling me to leave that space, to be more, be secretive, be boastful, be, make sure everybody knows what you did. That stuff only matters if you don't know what grounds you to begin with. So that's why it's so imperative. The higher you go, and I would say it's important no matter what level you are, but the higher you go, you better understand what it is that you value deeply, so that each day you can wake up with that being, because if you don't have that, you'll get pulled to comparison, or you'll get pulled towards recognition, because those are the things that we will gravitate towards if we don't have anything else clear that we're shooting for.
You've kind of answered the question that I was going to ask in a bit, in the idea around what attributes do you think, away from the X's and O's and the technical criteria of whatever domain, what attributes would you encourage practitioners to look at? And I suppose what you're talking about is clarity. What you said is clarity of values, clarity of what you hold true to you, which then allows you to step into a place of, well, not step into, just be more authentic, be truthful, stand in integrity of what you truly believe, which then, like you said, it reduces or stops the amount you're getting pulled around by not knowing that.
And you will absolutely get pulled. I mean, I really do believe that. And I think what's at the core, at least I hope what's at the core of that, is care. Like, I really do believe that you have to truly whether you're a strength coach, whether you're a physio, whether you're a psychologist, or whether you're on field, on court coach, at the end of the day, it is about this. We're in a relationship business. We're in we're humans, right? It's about trying to have people most authentically perform what they're capable of. And you have to feel a level of like, I'm protected because the people with me literally care about this for me, not because they care about it for them, but because they care about it for that person. And I don't know a better way. And it can be painful, right? It's like a relationship where you're in love and then you break up. It will be painful if it comes to an end.
Yes.
But I don't know a better way of approaching it while you're in it than deeply caring and let that guide you, and whatever comes from that can come from that. But I won't feel bad if the worst thing I did was just really care about the individuals and the group that I'm working with.
I think ties in what you said earlier about acceptance of showing up like that with deep care, authentic, and just accepting whatever comes at you. But I suppose the reason I'm saying that is I've heard some people describe like an environment where they feel they can't be themselves, where they feel they're not. The environment is requiring to live and work outside of their values, and so it'd be great to hear your perspective on that. But I suppose like what you're talking about is really maybe facing some hard truths, what you're pretending not to know about the situation, and having the empowerment to, if this is not the situation that allows that, choosing another environment that is more aligned to you.
Yeah, and I've had to do that where I was working somewhere and I just felt like this isn't good. I don't value this. I don't think it's good for the individuals that are trying to perform and live within this environment. And I did get out of it. But I recognize that not everybody has. I mean, I'm fortunate because I can kind of a little bit pick and choose. I don't want to act like I can just, it's work to be able to have new options, but a lot of times if someone's working and they're supporting their family and their spouse potentially isn't working, so they're the only one bringing in money. It can be dangerous to try to leave a place. It's hard. So I don't want to minimize how challenging that can be, but that's why it's so important to continually know what is it that I really believe in. And, in the moment that I can make that change, maybe you can't do it immediately, but the moment that I can, I want to be able to do that.
Well, I mean, you're the fifth. 5 out of 5 people I've spoken to now have all said having options or having flexibility in streams of income, diversity in people you work with, whatever it is, that you're the kind of the same messages come through in this. Like, don't be so pinned in by one. Don't be so reliant on one source. Now, if you're working for a team and you're full time, there's an element where you're restricted to do that. But I think maybe it's a time, and maybe this is the evolution of a practitioner, to have diversity in what they do, because because that allows some freedom of choice, I suppose.
It's funny that you say that, because my wife and I preach to our kids all the time, the greatest thing that you can have in life is choices. Not job titles, not money, but choices. Do you have options?
Right.
Because if you live a life where you can not get pinned in any one thing, that's a successful, that's a healthy way to go through life.
And I think it also requires a healthy way, and to be not so stuck on the badge or the team or the organization, and just to, if that is a sticky, kind of just pay attention to that and maybe soften that. And leading on then to mindfulness and mindfulness meditation, I hope people kind of tune into this, because I've said that before, how profound it has been in my own experience. And what we've spoken about, part of your work is, as I said in the introduction, kind of around you're looking, or what we find you're passionate about is high performance in a healthy and sustainable way. And so some of the things we've spoken about, looking at staff well-being, staff burnout, staff, but I also think, and you've touched on it, how not just the well-being of practitioners, but the impact practitioners can deliver is significantly reduced if they succumb to some of the things we've spoken about. And so from a mindfulness or meditation point of view, kind of, one, how did you get into it? What got you into that process? But two, your take on it with regards to obviously well-being, but leadership or performance.
I believe that the way I got into it's actually a very interesting question, because I don't know if I remember exactly how I did get into it, but I was a huge Michael Jordan fan growing up, and so I remember when he was playing for the Bulls, and Phil Jackson had brought mindfulness meditation to the Bulls, and that they would talk about it, and they would call him the Zen master. And I believe that that's where my introduction and reading about it, and and thinking like, man, this sounds interesting, began. Then in my work, I don't want to get too deep into the woods, but cognitive behavioral therapy, and then DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, has big components of awareness of experience and then choice. So, but the first part is you have to be kind of aware of what you're experiencing so that you can choose to respond rather than be reactive to whatever feeling is kind of created by the experience. And they both, talk a lot about the use of mindfulness meditation or being mindful. And I think through those experiences, I began to be interested in it. I read Jon Kabat-Zinn's book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, which is his book on kind of teaching what mindfulness is in a Western world,
right?
Western language, not Eastern philosophy, but maybe from a more Western viewpoint. And I think that helped me. And so I started to dabble in it for a while, but was inconsistent and didn't fully understand it. And then I think about 6 years in, as I was now working more deeply with athletes and wondering what's the connection. Like we need a practice. We need reps. That I wanted to find reps for my athletes. I didn't want to just teach them like this is a good mindset, but how do you get there? What do you do when your brain wants to shut off and go, be riddled with anxiety or with anger, and because when those things kick in, you can't it's hard to choose anything besides experiencing those emotions, those feelings. And so I wanted to know what's the reps that I can give them. And I just kept more study and I just like, this is it. And then it made me say, because like I said to you before, I walk the walk. If I'm telling you I want you to do something, I'm promising you that I'm doing it already. I promise you that. And so I found that I said, I'm going to be all in for a month. Can I do this every single day for a month? I did it every day for a month, and I never stopped since. Like that was, well over a decade ago, and I have not stopped since that month. I haven't stopped. And going back to that idea of breaking away from the old story that you tell and being authentic, that's where it comes, because mindfulness by definition is the non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. And so it's not just being aware of what's happening right now, but it's being aware of what's happening right now without judgment, without saying what the moment is good or bad. It's just accepting that in this moment, this is what's in front of me. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. It's not right. It's not wrong. It just is. And then from there, you can observe it. And one of the things that I observed, one of the things that I learned about me was a couple things. One is that I was a planner. My mind wanted to plan all the time, and it wanted to ask what if questions. And so I gained this deep self-awareness that those are things that drive me. I'm always in planning mode. What's next? What do I have today? What do I have to do? And then I asked, my brain was always asking what if questions, and what if questions are really ultimately very anxiety producing, because it's always like, well, what if this happens? What if I don't achieve this? What if I don't reach this? What if these people feel this way about me?
Right. Yeah.
And it was learning how to let go of all of that, to see it, not to think I'm bad, because it's pretty normal. I bet you might say, I did that, or I did that. And I know a lot of people that would say that's me, that, I was that as well, or I am that. But it's like, okay, now that I know that, what do I want to do with that? How do I want to interact with that? And you need that space. You need the space between what it is that you think and then what it is that you want, how you want to respond to those thoughts. Some of them I'm going to go with, sometimes I'm going to get angry about something, and I'm okay with being angry about that. It's not about being calm and zen all the time. It's about knowing, when do I want to choose to follow that anger, if that's what it is? When do I want to challenge the anger and say, wait a second, what's that going to do for me? But if everything just is the same, if it's all one ball, how do I manage life? Right? Because now the anger is going to direct how I do things, rather than me choosing, no, this deserves my anger right now, so I'm going to let it go, with a little bit of direction, rather than just like turning into the Incredible Hulk and just going after it. Yeah,
for sure. My experience, and anyone listening, and kind of what you think as well, but I guess the hardest part for me was it's the feeling. One, I didn't realize how much I tried to stop feeling, and two, like when you're sitting there, and if that anger, if you get that awareness of the anger within, and you realize this is not something I want to react to, I don't need this. This is, in my experience, it's kind of, this is familiar. This pattern, this feeling is familiar, but it's not around this situation.
Yes.
So feeling that, just allowing to feel it in my body. Yes. That's for the rubber meets the road, like that. Just to not react to it.
It's also hard because you've lived a lifetime. When I say you, I mean most of us have lived a lifetime rejecting certain feelings. Right? We've labeled certain feelings as the good feelings, other feelings as the bad ones. And if I'm experiencing the bad ones, I need to deny them, reject them, push them away. And what you were saying is like, man, I have to feel this. And even though it sucks to feel this, I need to feel this right now, because this is what I'm experiencing. And that is hard. But once you can reach that, like I've done it enough now, where it's like, okay, I don't have to hate this feeling. It's going to pass. I'm going to work through it, is where you start to gain just a deeper sense of what you're capable of. It doesn't make you better than anybody else. It just makes you more like, I know that I'm going to be okay. I just have to stay the course a bit, trust in these routines and habits, but I'll get there, rather than I need to reject this because there must be something bad about me, something unhealthy, something tainted, something wrong with me for experiencing it, because I'm not supposed to feel these things.
Right.
And that's wrong. And it only makes them bigger, actually, if once we try to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I could vouch for that. So kind of with I wonder how you see it in where do you see coaches, practitioners, and maybe it comes to kind of the work you do now. So, you touched on it already. You're doing some work with coaches and practitioners. Like, how, obviously not the people the names of the people involved, but like, how do you work with them? And I guess the kind of coaches that I'm working with, it's like I said before we started recording, there are some coaches that I've spoken with who are fortunate, have got a sports psychologist within their team or department they reach out to, and in a way it's often under the radar. No one knows that they're doing that. Or two, kind of the idea that there's just very few environments have this type of support for practitioners. So I wonder, I wonder kind of what you do, because really for anyone, any practitioners listening, or anyone listening really, if you're not in sport at all, kind of what are the type of things you're working with, and how do you see the space in sport moving forwards in the next, whatever, 5-10 years? Where would you like to see it go for practitioners' lens?
Well, I can say this. So first, from just a personal experience, everywhere that I've been embedded in a team program, I have absolutely had, whether they're formal, whether they're informal, at going to dinners, going to lunches, going to, being on a plane, being in a bus, traveling, I've had these experiences with coaches and performance staff members, every place, where they utilized, like I said, or like you mentioned, either formal, like, we're going to do this, or informal, as in, hey, can we just hang out and talk for a bit, periodically? And I value that work, and I value that work for many reasons, but I think why organization leaders should value that work is because for me to give my best, I need to be at my best. And so if you have a bunch of people who aren't sleeping, who are not taking care of themselves physically, and who are riddled with stress and anxiety, imposter syndrome. How are you in any way thinking that person then is bringing 100% of their best to the table? They can't.
Yes.
Not their fault, because it's often what the environment forces almost.
Right.
But so I want to frame it in this idea that if we're in a high performance environment, then the coaches should be also part of the high performance, not just because they have knowledge. Obviously they have knowledge, or they wouldn't even be in the seat. That's the kind of the bare minimum, actually, to get you there. Then it's this other stuff. And so I really believe in it, and I've been lucky to be able to provide that and really value that work. And where do I see it heading? I do see it heading in the right direction, but not nearly fast enough, and not nearly as embedded as what it should be, even though it is further along than it's ever been. But man, there are still so many people wanting to, I don't want to call it stigmatize it. I don't think they want to stigmatize it, but they don't know how to get out of it. It's almost like that's what they've heard so much that their instinctual response is to like mock it a little bit, or to roll their eyes, maybe.
Well, interesting you say that. I'll put this link to this paper below, but there's a paper done this year, July, I think it was, I'll say 2023, on looking at mental health, conceptualization of mental health in English Premier League, so English proper Premier League soccer academies. And one of the limiting factors to seeking mental health is the stigmatization of it. And that's at the Premier League level So it's interesting you
And
said that.
yet,
Just made me think.
I just shared yesterday on my Twitter account, Thierry Henry talking about the value of mental health and what it was like when he was playing, how you couldn't say any, like literally could not say anything when and yes, he's, an older legend, let's say, but I mean, it's not that long ago that he was, on the world stage. And yet it does seem like a lot, like the way he was talking about it is like, it was impossible to speak on this, but then the way he was putting it was like, we're all just human beings and everybody's got stuff that comes up. And so it's great that we're having these conversations now, even though he felt like he couldn't have. And this is, this was one of the best footballers in the world. Maybe of all time, we could put him in the, pantheon. Talking about this. So let's stop the idea that it's only for people who haven't reached success or haven't that experienced these things. The best of the best experience it, and then everybody else as well, because we're all just human beings, period.
Do you see that support for practitioners? Like, do you see that being an internal, like provided by organizations, teams, or do you see it as an external type of both coach-facing services? And I wonder, again, I wonder how you see that.
In a perfect world, I would hope that every organization values it legitimately and provides it. Again, we would never in a million years think about not having a physio on a staff, right? If somebody twists their ankle, we would never in a million think, well, you got to figure it out on your own. That would be insane in this modern world. So I don't know why we wouldn't think the same exact way around, and not just our athletes, but the whole staff, everyone, right?
Yeah.
With that being said, I do see that there is value in when, so I have X amount of my client list is actually, they hire me directly. I don't work with their team. They hire me directly. And man, that work is really, really, it's in fact some of the best work that I do, because there's this investment and they're not worried at all about my connection to the organization. Now, I would tell you, and I think the athletes that I work with in organizations that I work trust that I'm not sharing their world with anyone. With that being said, you're in the same building, right? They see me eating dinner with coaching staff, what have you, and it would be human nature to be like, I wonder what's going on there. Whereas when you're working individually, one-on-one, no connection to the organization at all, I think those athletes feel a comfort. And so there's beauty in that as well. And maybe what would be greatest if the organization has the money, has the resources, would be to, hey, we have this in-house, but we also have like set aside X amount that could be put towards if you wanted to hire somebody through your agent on your own, and we would, have some level of support so it doesn't have to come out of your own pocket. Or they could say it does have to come out of your own pocket, but we understand. But either way, I do see value in both, and I understand both.
Yeah. Well, a few coaches have said, kind of touched on that, the idea of if it was provided by HR, if it meant them going to HR, they would worry about that. Whether there's any validity in that, I don't know, but their perception anyway of if they were to reach out to their HR department and say, look, I'm struggling right now. That I know. So I've heard that as well, and a very kind of real.
All I can say is that it's real.
Yeah.
It's real as in that's the way some individuals feel, not it's real as in there's a problem.
Yes.
But that they experience that question in their own mind. Is it going to come back somehow, some way to me? And we do everything we possibly can to make sure that there's the firewalls in between and allowing them to know that what they're doing is confidential. but I think it's human nature to a certain degree.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's kind of coming to the hour now. Like you've said so many wonderful things, and I wonder. Before, what I want to kind of talk about or finish on really is like the kind of services that you provide, mindfulness on the app that you provide. But before we go into that, is there anything else that you sort of want to add that you haven't done, and don't worry if there isn't.
I don't know if there's something that we missed, but I would say this, and because I know the audience is more the coaches, performance staff that's listening, and I just feel like one of the things that we all have, I think the draw towards going towards working in some of the highest performance environments possible is like this idea of like what's on the very edge of best, like, and somehow we were fascinated with that, or we wouldn't be on this path.
Mm-hmm.
And yet to know that as you experience those things, they will not validate your existence. So be interested, be curious, go for it even, but don't convolute that into the belief that once you find it and reach it and experience it, that it'll somehow then, if there's a hole now in this experience, there will be a hole then in your experience. Like, so working on filling that hole along the way, along the journey is, I promise, is so important, and it will make you better. It'll make the experience better. You'll feel better in it. And I don't know a better, like, how, if that's the case, how do you, like, that's as good as it can be, right? If you're in it, yet also experiencing it in a way where I could do this for 30 years instead of, I can barely get to the end of this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I can vouch for that. The more work I've done on it ties with acceptance of where I am now, and that I'm in the perfect place right now. And just the practice of that, variations of that's helped me a great deal. And
yeah, but it takes work.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And to just see it, to be able to be with it, see it and be with it. It's not a quick fix. Again, in my experience, it's that's the work. That's the work there. And
it is the work. Yeah.
But so worthwhile. Worthwhile.
Yeah.
And so kind of with your services, the app, like, kind of finish on how do you work? What is the Doso app, I think it is. And anything else that you want to share?
Yeah. Well, I'll start there. So I mentioned to you that I was in this pursuit of reps. Like, what's the exercise that it's going to take for me to be in the middle of chaos and find clarity and focus. And so at some point, I came to mindfulness. I started using it with my teams and my individual clients. And one of my clients said, "Why do you keep sending me to somebody else's app? I like what you do when you're with us. Why? This is what you're sending us to is different than what you do." Because I did it with a focus on the athlete, whereas they may have just been going to like a guided meditation app. And I was like, boy, that's actually pretty good question. Why am I doing that? And so we decided to invest in creating an app. And so it's called Doso, DOSO, and it's available in the App Store.
The link's below, by the way.
What's that?
The link's below.
Okay. And so, the goal of it is just to give, 10 to 12 minutes a day and the focus is a bit of sports psychology. And then, then kind of morphs into the use of mindfulness meditation, but with a performance psychology bent to it. that's what that is. And it's been wonderful, and we're continuing to work on it and update it. So it's we're proud of it, and we want it to continue to grow. And then I guess the focus of my other work is to, is working with, at this point, high level elite athletes are working probably at, and performing at the professional level. And then working with coaches, and really, to kind of diving into the needs of a coach are really no different than the needs of an athlete. We all need some level of a coach in order to bring out our best and have a place to go potentially that's not a peer, not another coach on the staff, not even our spouse who, is going to be probably a bit biased. Maybe we don't need bias in the moment. We need somebody that's going to give us just straight feedback. And so that's the goal of that work. And those are kind of the big directional paths that we're on right now.
Right. Well, the links to your website and the app is below, and some of the references that we spoke about, the book, wherever you go, there you are. So you can just check all that below, and your Twitter handle and your kind of where people can find you on social. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Stu. I really appreciate it. I've loved this conversation, and I'm sure everyone listening will do as well.
I feel like you and I can have these conversations for hours upon hours. So I, as always, always feel better when we have these conversations. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I just want to remind you, if you did enjoy it, if you're taking some really good takeaways from this podcast already, I want to encourage you, invite you to leave a review on Spotify or iTunes. Your action of doing that is directly going to help this podcast reach more practitioners that need it.